Good evening. We've got about 24 in. I need to tell you, this is the first time on this end of the Zoom meeting for me. So we're going to do our best to get through the Redlands Unified District-wide annual booster meeting. Can everybody hear me? Just sort of raise a hand a little bit. Rich, you good?
Good.
All right, very good. My name is Pat Hafley, and I serve as the district athletic. This is our 10th annual district booster meeting, a little bit later than normal this time of the year. This is our first one via Zoom. And again, bottom line is for all of us to be in one place at one time, go through the process and procedures that are required for booster groups in Redlands Unified, because it is a California school business requirement that all booster clubs are approved by the school board annually. And we're going to have a little different format that'll be talked about this year when it comes to hard copies or doing it online, and that'll be touched upon later in the meeting. But like I've said, every single year, Redlands Unified is a special place, and well, one of the big reasons, there are many, but one of them is the support that we get from our groups and our extracurricular activities, which unfortunately are in a holding pattern right now with the COVID pandemic. But hopefully our goal is that things continue to get better in a hurry so our kids can enjoy the extracurricular participation. And when we are given the green light, that we're able to move forward and make that happen, because these kind of meetings have already taken place. So with the help of Brian Gugasberg, who is at home Zooming, Carrie Ann McEmel, who's with the business office here, as well as Kenny Morris. We will streamline, this meeting's been streamlined. We've done it our share of times. You may hear a lot of the same information if you were a return booster parent, which we appreciated, but please understand, we feel that this has definitely helped us stay out of some issues and some problems with our booster groups, because you don't have to look far or wide to find issues with booster groups that have done things the inappropriate way. They usually get above the fold in the newspaper, right? What we're going to do is, during the meeting, you are more than welcome to go to the chat button at the bottom. Well, first of all, we'd like to have you go to the chat room button at the bottom, put your name as well as what group you represent and what school. That'd be sort of like attendance for us at the meeting. And you also may be able to go there and submit any questions you might have, because at the end of the meeting, we'll answer those questions, as well as give you the opportunity to, what's that called, Kirian? The hand up thing?
Reaction button. To make a
reaction button that you could go to at the end of the meeting when we open it up for questions, to pose questions at that time as well. So with that said, Brian's next, right?
Yes.
I'm going to turn it over to Brian Gugasberg out of our purchasing and finance, and let him through the business office, and let him work through the majority of the slides. Take it away, Brian.
Thanks, Pat, and welcome parents and other interested people that are involved in this. As much as Pat can tell you, we both grew up in Redlands. We're part of the school system. We were active in many of the activities that you parents support, and now we're on the school side of things, and we can truly say how much we appreciate and know the importance of what our parents do and the quality of the total experience with Redlands Unified that parents provide for their kids. Pat as well put a couple kids through the system. I had a daughter that worked her way through it, so we've touched it from all the different places. So we'll move on to the next slide, please, Carrie Ann.
Well, it shows it on my screen, it's working. Sorry, hang on. Technical difficulty.
There we go. When we talk about booster clubs, they're part of a subset of parent groups. They all are active in representing the school and the kids that are at that school, but it's also necessary to follow guidelines set forth by the district. Some of those guidelines are set forth by Ed Code. Some are in the state's constitution. And we do all of this to protect parents, patrons, and most importantly, our goal here is to make sure that we protect our kids. Next slide, please. We have different groups that make up our students and how they're organized. One of the key ones, and we'll get to why this is important later, there's the ASBs, the Associated Student Bodies. It's an organization composed of the students on behalf of students. And they conduct fundraisers, they spend their own money. They all have an adult supervisor who helps guide them through the process. But the key here to take away is it's students for the benefit of students. Next slide, please. We also have informal groups. It's parents that are interested in a particular activity, but they aren't necessarily a formally organized group. It might be parents that help with a middle school choir and are there for refreshments and those kinds of things. One of the ones that we had when I had my daughter in school was for mock trial. There was no official parent group, but we were there at some of the invitationals or some of the championships to provide food and drinks and beverage and support the kids so that they didn't have to think of a lot of stuff. Generally, the informal groups will not have a tax ID number, and they're just there to provide general support as directed by the faculty advisor. Next slide, please. The most formal parent group is the PTA. I think we're all pretty familiar with that. And it's parents, community members, and staff all coming together to support the school. It can be athletic teams, it might be debate, it could be musical groups, but these are the ones that are referred to as a school-connected organization. They're an official group, they've got bylaws, and they're very specifically identified for, in the case of PTA, it's for the whole school. In the booster group world, it's for that particular activity. Next slide, please. Some of the things to keep in mind are that your booster clubs are separate from the school and separate from the district. You serve as an auxiliary to the school's program, and your fundraising events involve the primary participation of you, the parents, and other adult community members. And this is the key why I was focusing on the ASB earlier, where ASB is students for support of students. Booster clubs are parents and adults in support of the kids. Next slide, please. You may charge membership fees for raising funds, but one thing to keep in mind is that you cannot have a requirement of someone to be a member of your booster group and have that affect the ability of the student to participate in the activity at the school. Next slide, please. All of this gets couched under what's called the free and appropriate public education. California, in its state constitution, has a free school guarantee. And in that, we need to make sure that we aren't limiting a child's ability to participate in one of the activities that we offer at our sites. You as a booster group can sell team gear, but it can't be at the expense of a student. Like a Spirit Pack that has $52 worth of t-shirt, gym shorts, and logo socks, and it's being sold for $120. You can certainly sell it for the cost it takes to put it together, but fundraising can't be on the backs of the kids in the activity. The fundraising has to be with members of the community, parents, interested people, and likewise, there's no limit on what you can charge. If you can buy a sweatshirt for $12.50 and sell it for $50, God love you and great profit margin, and keep doing more of it. You have to be careful that a student never thinks that any level of participation is required in the booster group by purchasing practice gear, game gear. Specifically, your websites can't have any language that implies that a purchase is required. But again, sale of gear to parents, family, the community, perfectly acceptable, and sell as much of it as you can. Next slide, please. And really of great importance is communication and outreach to students, whether it's with flyers, website content, has to be approved by your site administrator prior to dissemination to the students. Depending on your site, it may be the athletic director, it may be the AP. Doubtful that it would be your principal, but it might be. Next slide, please. To be a booster group, we have a board policy that requires that every year the group applies to be a booster club. And the information on that is the name of the organization, the contact information of your officers, what your plans are with fundraising, what bank and who's authorized to sign on your bank account. Of great importance here, your coaches or the advisors for the activity are not to be signers on your bank accounts. And Pat will confirm that when he meets with the coaches, he drives home that point to them that they are also not to. So they can't say, oh, that's a misunderstanding, or no. The coach or the advisor is not to be connected to your organization other than the person you talk to and deal with in what's the best way that we can support our kids. But they are not to have the ability to control your funds. You'll need the site administrator's approval. You'll have to prove evidence of liability insurance. And if you're going to have tax exempt status, you'll need to provide your tax ID number. And for the next slide, I'm gonna let Carrie Ann talk this one up because she's the one that did all the heavy lifting for it.
Hi. So this year we're trying a new process. We're going to do the applications online. So instead of having hard copies of everything and taking it to the school site and having the principal sign off on it, there's a form that's available on our website, and you'll just complete the form and then you'll email back the things that I need, for instance, like the bylaws or the certificate of insurance or the tax information. So you can find that form on our website under Parents and Guardians /families, and that's our Booster Club website. And then it's also available here where you can just click on the screen or write it down. Or if you email me, I can send you a link. Brian, you want to talk about insurance?
Sure. One of the things that you'll be required to supply to the district is current or be available is a copy of your constitution and bylaws and a certificate of insurance, and again, evidence of your tax exempt status. On your certificate of insurance, you will have to name Redlands Unified as an additional insured. And it's not a really big deal. You just tell your insurance provider that you're going to name Redlands as an additional insured. And the district requires proof of liability insurance in the amount of $1 million combined with a single limit with the district as additional insured endorsement. And depending on if you're going to be using our facilities for anything, am I stepping on you, Ken? Am I taking your spot on this one?
All right, keep going.
Use of school facilities might require a higher level of coverage based on the type of event. When you're doing the application, it's on the district website under Booster Club information, select families, and you'll find the Booster Club link and you can fill it out. Next slide. I think I already covered that one. So next one. If you are going to take on tax exempt status, you're going to have your tax identification number because you won't be able to open a bank account without it. And you will be directly responsible for your own compliance with the IRS or the state and whatever their requirements are. Tax returns, that's the requirement. If you're going to be a 501c3, which is the tax code for being a deductible charity donation, you'll need to make sure that you have applied and approved by the IRS for that. Next slide, Carrie Ann. This is the website to go to the IRS for the instructions and then to fill out the form. Just so you all know, so you don't have to write notes frantically right now. This slideshow will be on the district website tomorrow, so you can pull all of this information off of that. Next slide, please. And then once you take care of the IRS, by making sure you filled out all of their appropriate paperwork, and again, this is just more of the steps you need to go through to take care of that. If you're a larger group or even a smaller group, if someone is a parent in your school or one of your kids who's a CPA, this is a really good time to get them active in your group. Next slide, please. And then like the feds, California also wants their action out of all of this. So you'll need to make sure that you take care of getting your organization and your tax ID and doing all of the correct information with the franchise tax board. Next slide, please. Okay, and at the beginning of each year, your group needs to submit to the principal or whoever the designee is a list of the fundraising events that you propose to hold. This is actually ed code, but it also helps the site administrator try to balance what's going on at their site. You don't want all the kids out there trying to sell the same thing at the same time or stepping on each other. So part of what they do is they're trying to make sure that everybody gets a fair chance for a bite at the apple for their fundraising. And again, students not involved in fundraising activities except as volunteers. And kids make great volunteers, but they can't be required to do it to participate. And now we're up to Ken's portion.
So right now, we'll take just a second. Those that have just joined the meeting today, maybe you joined after we got started. If you would just go to the chat down there at the bottom of your screen, and please let us know who you are and what group you represent so that Carrie Ann can take attendance today. Also, if you would like to, in the chat, put your email address. Carrie Ann will also send you the link for this PowerPoint presentation and the application if needed. All you have to do is in the chat box, go ahead and put your email address and we'll put you on our list. I'd also like to give you just a minute. If there's any questions up to this point that Brian can answer before I start, we'll give you just a minute to also put those in the chat and we'll let Carrie Ann check that. So we'll let people get signed in here quickly. Those of you who want to add your email address, go ahead and do that. And if there's any questions for Brian up to this point.
Not seeing so far.
again, as you go along the way, if you have any questions that you would like to put into the chat box, feel free to do that. Carrie Ann will take time here in a few to review some of the questions, and we'll go over those. If you have a question and you would like us to unmute you to be able to ask that question in person, use the reaction button that's at the bottom as well, and we will use that once we get closer to the end of the presentation. So if you can find your reaction button, if you have a question, we'll give you a chance to ask at that point in time as well. Anything, are you ready to go? Can we keep going? All right, so the next screen here is use of district facilities. And so when do I need an application for use of facilities? I will be honest, this will be a strange year, and it's going to be quite different. Anybody that's at the high school, it's going to be very difficult for you to find space, time, to be able to get things in that you are hoping to plan. There might be a time limit, things like that, that have to be added to your use of facility as we try to navigate putting in, is it 3 seasons in a season and a half?
All 3 seasons of sport have been divided into 2, a modified fall and modified spring. So all 23 varsity programs at all 3 schools will be competing during the 2nd semester.
On top of that, we have all of our activity groups that are a part of this, and you will be trying to get in and get your activities going as well. And so we are all going to have to get along. We are going to have to try to do our best and cooperate with each other. And honestly, we're asking for people to cooperate, and there may be some sacrifices that are needed. That being said, let's still try to make as many things happen as possible. An application is required when requesting to use one of our facilities for major events where the public is invited. So if you're going outside of your group to host an event, you will need to do a use of facilities application. If you were just doing a, let's say, awards banquet for your group, you will do that on the calendar at your site. Again, those calendars are going to be impacted greatly, but that's what we will need to do. So again, if you're bringing in the public or if you are collecting money, most often you need an application to make sure that we can check that event and make sure we can protect you as best that we can. Applications are available on the district's website. We ask that you allow 3 weeks to process, so hopefully you're planning well out of 3 weeks period of time, and we can figure out, and we're going to need those 3 weeks this year because, again, it's going to be tight. So give us 3 weeks so we can find alternatives, find different venues for you possibly to use. It may be a different ask than normal. So please keep that in mind as we go forward. What do I need to have in order to get my use of facilities application approved? You need to have a completed application. If there's a box that is empty, it's not complete. If that box does not pertain to you, put NA, something in the box to make sure you check all the way through it. You will be amazed how many incomplete applications come through the office, and then we come very close to not being able to get an event to happen. It happens more than you think. Number 1, make sure you have your insurance certificates. Again, RUSD needs to be also on that insurance certificate. Booster clubs, if you have to pay for a weekend or holiday use or special facilities such as a stadium or a theater, we want to make sure that we give you ample time to make sure that you can cover those costs. There is also a cost for custodial security and kitchen staff. So if you're planning to serve food or use the kitchen in any manner, we have to go through those steps. We must check in with the CNS department to make sure that we have what is necessary to be in place. And again, we're asking that all costs are paid in advance. Next screen, thank you. On our use of facilities, again, this will just be under the facilities department. You will see that there's a red light. There are some restricted activities that we do not allow to happen on school property. Are there restrictions? Yes. However, if you have a way to present that you think is different, by all means, present your activity. I challenge every group every year to try to add something to our red light list. That means you're thinking outside the box, and someone's going to hit a home run with an activity somewhere, which is great for every group if they're able to do that. So if you're able to think outside the box, you have a great idea of a way to try to get a fundraiser off the ground. Let us be a part of that process and try to help you along the way. Just make sure you bring that to our office so we can help you through that. Again, we never want to tell people no. We only do it when it's the liability is too much to handle. You've got to understand that. Next screen. So there is a red light list. You'll see certain things on there. Usually we have the list in front of us where we get to share things like monster truck rallies are not allowed, and dunk tanks and things like that are on our red light list. But there's also a yellow light list, and those are activities that can happen, but they need district approval. So make sure you review these activities. And again, if you think you have a way to make something happen, please let us know, and we will take it to our risk management, and we will check our insurances. We will check what you have for insurance, and we will see what we can allow. Those of you who want to sell food, you are going to need to go to the San Bernardino County Department of Public Health, who are very, very busy right now battling with COVID. And so their process, I can't guarantee will happen as fast as it has in the past. So make sure you plan accordingly. We have time currently, but you'll want to plan, as I do not know how fast they can turn things around at this moment. But you will need to go to them to make sure that you can get your permits in place to be able to sell food at your games with the temporary event health permit. On the screen, you will see a sample of what it should look like. Again, if you're only hosting a snack bar and nothing else, you just need the temporary event. If you are trying to host more than that, say a snack bar plus food trucks or multiple food trucks, you're going to have to sign up for an additional event planner permit. So it takes more than one. Many groups that are on this chat have gone through this process. If you go to your site AD or office, they usually know what groups have gone through this, and maybe they can put you into touch with someone who has done that. If not, if you've added your email to the chat box, just put in food sales or something like that as a question. We will try to help step you through this process. But there are many booster groups that are out there that have gone through this, and they've gone through it more than I have, and they're probably a better expert than we are. So I just want to make sure you know that there are people out there that have gone through this process and can help you along the way. Yes, and as Mr. Hapley has stated, and some of the, I don't know how many participants you can see, but we've had the county show up and try to shut down some of our food sales, and you see some of the heads nodding. And so it has happened. Please make sure if you are going to sell food that you go through this process. Now, if you're just going to use a table like what I'm sitting at here with all packaged food and all bottled everything, you'll be able to get away with it without having to step through this. Again, this is for if you are going to prepare food for events. So make sure if there's any questions, reach out to us so we can help you along the way. Here's the website that you can go to help get started, sbcounty.gov. Again, if you want to go to the office to ask for our help in person, it's right around the corner of San Bernardino, 385 North Arrowhead Avenue. They are on the second floor in the corner, or also you can use the phone number that's listed. Again, this information is on this PowerPoint, which will be on our website, so you do not have to write frantically all the information. You can look at this later if needed. Is this me, Brian? Am I continuing?
No, you're back to me now.
Okay, because, yeah, I feel better if you would do it.
All right. One of the things to keep in mind is that the treasurer's books and accounts are to be open and available to the district to review at any time if we would request to do so. Need to be very careful about gifts to the student body of money or of any materials that they have to be approved by the principal or the designee. Pat can probably expand on this a little bit, but it can be very, very troubling with CIF if certain gifts are given and they are in excess of certain amounts of money, and it can take a championship season and turn it into a real loser. Pat?
I'm sorry, go ahead, Brian.
Well, I was just going to say, I think you could probably expand on the gifts of money to
Well,
student athletes.
The scoop, it becomes a problem with the NCAA eligibility stuff because there are questions there to the student athletes when they fill out the proper paperwork for the institution they're going to be attending. So to stay away from that, there's other things that can be gifted to the kids rather than money.
Okay, so it's just good to remember cash and gifts can be very problematic, and talked about it a little bit earlier, but can't emphasize enough. The coach or the district advisor or their immediate family, like wife or daughter, cannot be a signatory on the club or the group's bank accounts. We have to keep the coach and the advisor at arm's length from the booster club's financial activities. Next slide, please. Any purchases or donations or site improvements that your club does on the behalf of the activity need to be donated to the district. They need to become district property. Example would be a pitching machine for the baseball team. The district needs to become the owner of that. If you're planning on doing something, get into Ken on this one, but you want to put a flagpole up at the softball stadium or something like that, you'll need to get a campus improvement application, and you'll need to have that filled out ahead of time because it has to touch a lot of different people. We have to have the finance office look at it. We have to have it reviewed for Title IX compliance. We have to make sure that it doesn't interfere with our facilities at our site. And we also need to make sure that our maintenance and operations people have a chance to look at it. It might be something that requires electric power and trenching for a conduit. Everyone knows but forgets that, well, there might be other electrical in the ground, there might be plumbing, there might be any number of things. So we need to make sure that it's fully vetted, and we make sure that we're just making sure that we're not causing ourselves a bigger problem than if we hadn't done anything at all. And if you're doing a capital improvement of over $5,000, it has to be processed through our district purchasing and facilities department. Ken, you have anything else to add on that?
Again, this application will be found on the district website. I hope everybody is familiar with the district website. It should become every booster group's friend. This current application, the CIA application, is in multiple places, but the easiest place to find it is under maintenance and operation. And the reason why is we require anybody who wants to do an improvement to our campuses to go through this process, to go through the committee. So our school principals must go through this process as well. This is not just a booster group application. So this is a district-wide application that everybody that wants to make improvements will do. And then it also helps us to keep what we're calling our Redlands Unified School District standard. We have a standard of what we feel needs to be put in to allow things to happen. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to contact myself, add that email into the chat box, or we'll be happy to to go through this. And the last thing I want to say about the CIA, and Brian, Pat, myself, we're on that committee. We're only three of the members. There's other members as well. We are not a committee that's trying to tell people no. All we're trying to do is find a way that it can be done correctly. And so we will find every avenue to try to either help you get that put in place or find an alternative to do something. So it's not a committee that's trying to say no at all. We're just trying to get things done correctly.
Just real quick, Brian, just a little note here on this one. This used to, because most of our booster groups are high school related booster groups, we had the CAKE form or Co-Curricular Activities Improvement Committee form, which looked very similar to this. That was worked with, you would work with the site athletic director, site administration to make it happen. Then it would come to my office. The bottom line is we had a lot of requests for campus improvement from our elementary schools as well and our middle schools. So it's been streamlined that all of the, and changed the name to the, could be CYA, to be honest with you. That's what we're trying to do, is cover everybody. It is the fact that because we have elementary and middle school that want to do campus improvements at times, we've streamlined it through the business office, and it is the CIA form. So just make note of that. Okay.
Did you want me to answer that now, Carrie Ann, or?
Yeah, go ahead.
So do you want to read the question so everybody knows what the question is?
There's a question in the chat room that says, since a pitching machine is being donated to the district, are they replacing it if it gets stolen while locked up on campus?
Brian, you want that, or you want me to take it?
That one's yours, Ken.
So if it's donated to Redlands Unified School District, it follows Redlands Unified School District policy, and we have a liability amount like anybody would if you have your own insurance for your own car, where we have to pay a deductible. So if it doesn't reach our deductible amount, then it's not something that we would claim. If it reaches our deductible amount, then we process the information that's needed and we go forward with it at that point in time. So it comes down truly to the cost of what is being donated. And that kind of happens with every single personal property I believe we have on our campus. Is that acceptable, Brian?
I think so.
So hopefully that answers that question. Are there any other questions, Carrie Ann?
What's the deductible amount?
Do we know our deductible amount?
I believe our deductible right now is $10,000.
Any other questions? All right, we're moving forward.
Okay. And thank you all for bearing with us. We're just down to a few slides, so there is light at the end of the tunnel. If your group is wanting to pay staff additional hours, like you want to put a drumline coach on with marching band or something like that, we need to make sure that we run those people through our human resources department at the district. Couple of items come into play on that. Most importantly is we want to vet the person and make sure that they are safe to be around our kids. Because again, it's the safety of our students and our children is the primary goal. The secondary part of that is to make sure that these people are appropriately paid and that the right taxes are withheld and all of that. So you work with HR, we'll put through a personnel requisition, and then the organization will have to give the money to the district to pay out the payroll to that person. So it becomes, if you want them to net $1,000, it's going to be more than that because there's going to be some statutory withholdings that have to be taken care of so that that person gets the $1,000 that you're wanting them to receive. But again, it's, if you're going to do that, work with our human resources department. Next slide, please. This is for your own benefit. This is really for the officers of your organization, your treasurer, most likely. documents that you should retain and be very accurate with are your cash receipts, your cash disbursements and general ledger. If your group is small enough, it may just be that that's your checkbook. Make sure you maintain bank records. Make sure you appropriately take care of tax returns. And one of the things that will keep you out of the most trouble, and this is fully for your benefit. I've served on a lot of boards for philanthropic organizations, and the one that will always come back to are minutes of a meeting. Make sure that somebody's keeping track of, yes, we voted to buy this. Yes, we voted to reimburse this. We said, no, don't spend more than $250 on that. Just the minutes are great. If your treasurer goes back and is trying to reconcile something on the bank statement, meeting minutes will usually clear something up. And it's a great way for, oh, wait a minute, we never approved that. I mean, it's a great baseline to have, and meeting minutes can also help clear up issues that you may or may not have if you have a tax audit. Next slide. One of the big issues with booster clubs, and it's Google booster club embezzlement, and your head will spin at the number of nefarious acts that people commit stealing money from kids. It's absolutely amazing. And it'll be 10,000, it'll be 15, it'll be 25. There was a treasurer of a booster club down in Murrieta who whacked him for about $180,000. And so it's not that these people are evil necessarily. It's that things happen in their life that other folks may not know about. Opportunities happen, and they just make a bad decision in the moment, and usually that bad decision snowballs into many, many more bad decisions. So one of the things I go through is, if you are someone who's going to be signatory to the account or someone who's going to be taking care of the records of your organization, have two people involved in most everything. If you're collecting cash, two people. It's best if two people go to the bank to make the deposit. Somebody gets, and you try not to think of these things, but somebody gets robbed and loses the receipts from some fundraiser for $4,500. Yeah, they got robbed, but if there's nobody there to witness it, did it really happen? And while nobody wants to think to that dark side, this stuff happens. And like I say, Google it and look, it happens all the time. Be familiar with your bank. Let your bank know who you are. There's still enough local banks around where you can do things like that. Checks are the way to go. And while checks are not debit cards, they're not credit cards, they're not electronic banking, they're not cute, they're not sexy, but checks are a fantastic way to control the money that goes out the door. And best that the person who is signing the checks is not the person that's getting the bank statements mailed to their house. Let someone else look at the bank statement. And again, this goes back to having minutes of your meeting. Somebody opens up the statement, they start looking at, and they're going, well, wait a minute. What's this thing to J&M Trophy or whatever? We never approved anything for that. But it has other eyeballs looking at it and checking on it, and it's easy enough to pass that statement along to the treasurer. Redlands isn't so big that if you're not attending a mandatory Zoom meeting on a Monday night, you can't run by somebody's house and drop the statement off on their front porch or leave it for them. If you need to bring in a disinterested party who can keep track of your checking account, sometimes it could just be a community volunteer. And the other thing to look at is fraud insurance. It can be purchased, and if you have a relatively robust booster club, like football, baseball, band, some of those that have pretty good sized budgets, the little bit extra to insure yourself against theft is really worth it. But the one thing to remember, if you go that path, you do have to have safeguards in place, and you have to be someone who follows those, so that if you do get ripped off, it's someone who blatantly didn't follow the tips. So anyway, like I say, I kind of harp on this slide for, some would think, a little bit too long, but it is so easy to lose a lot of money in a hurry, and you don't need that kind of publicity, and you don't need that kind of heartache. You're all working too hard to take care of the kids and give them a wonderful experience than to let something like this happen. So next slide. Again, school personnel should not try to manage or control your organization. You are a separate group. You stay at arm's length from the school district. No one should be telling you how to run your group. Now, you should be operating in concert with the faculty advisor or coach, that there's certain needs for the team, and you as the booster group are going to try to help support those needs. But the coach or advisor should not be telling you how to run your group. The school should not cause others to believe that it's in charge of your group. And likewise, your group should not be telling people that you are representing the school as an agent of the school. You should have your own kind of letterhead, not the school's letterhead. Wildcat baseball boosters, great. You don't want Redlands East Valley High School as your letterhead. So that kind of thing. Next slide, Carrie Ann. See, we got there. We got to the end. Want to thank all of you for patiently sitting in on this. And if you have any questions, we're available by email. We're available by phone pretty regularly. We check messages. Email works really, really well. And we're happy to answer, entertain the what ifs. Well, I have a friend of a friend who's doing that. We get it. And we're really welcome all the inquiries and want to help do it the right way and make it a good experience for not only you, but most importantly for the kids involved. Pat, you got anything to wrap up with?
I sure do. Couple of things. I've been advised to make sure that if you have not signed in with your name, your respective group, and the school you're representing in the chat room, so again, roll can be appropriately taken. The other thing is put your email address in the chat room there with that same message if you have, or if you've already done that when we first came on, please do that as well, so Carrie Ann can get you the application for the booster group that is now online. So are there any questions for, do I just take the questions as they come up?
Yeah,
like
there's
that?
a question right here.
Okay. The question is, after we get things going, well, let me back up first. The scoop is, right now, we do not have a set date to start activities up right now. Our kids are not in school, in the classroom. That's our primary focus. But when we do get up and going, there are phase startup, starting with phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 that are put forth by the National Federation of High Schools, as well as the Sports Advisory Medical Committee. And that's been sort of fostered down to the CIF state office, to the CIF local office, which is the southern section for us. and we would have to start up with the phase one, which would be fall sports out of the gate. And again, we do not have that date. One of the questions is, after we start up, are we allowed to travel out of state for tournaments during spring break? I can tell you the answer is probably going to be no to that. It hasn't been visited, knowing that we're not even up and competing right now. There's lots of things that need to be answered once we do get up and start practicing in phase one. Hopefully all goes well, we get into phase two, which would bring on the other sports, and then phase three, which would allow competition. But based on county guidelines, as well as the Department of CDC in San Bernardino County, there's going to be a lot of things that we're told from that level, just like when we were looking at what kind of school year to start with. We were pretty much told by the governor and the county that we were not in a position to start in-class sessions whatsoever. So next question is where?
Can we begin fundraising activities now?
You can begin fundraising activities now if it involves only parents in the booster group, would be a fair statement. We're not condoning any type of interaction right now with our students with anything that is school related. What's the next one? That's it?
Right now.
Any reactions?
I haven't seen it. Any other questions?
Any other questions that might be out there? Okay. Again, I've started this meeting for 10 years, and hang on. Can we begin ordering game gear? That's something that's going to be a decision that's on the booster group itself and the advisor or coach that adheres to that. Things have to go real well for us to be in a position to start the athletic competition come January 8th. Again, we have 23 varsity programs at this time, and in previous years, we had 3 seasons of sport to get those 23 varsity teams and the lower levels their athletic competition in. We have now, based on the CIF calendar, which I think we have to give them kudos for being creative and coming up with the ability to get all 23 varsity programs and the lower levels as best we can, a competitive season, but it is all during the second semester. As Kenny said, that's going to be a huge challenge on facilities. That's going to be a huge challenge on kids that are multi-sport athletes. That's going to be a huge challenge on coaches that might coach multiple sports, a huge challenge on officials. And then the list goes on, and parents as well. So transportation is the other piece, because that's a tough one already. When we do it spread out over a year, now we're doing it in a semester. So how do I want to say? Challenging times ahead of us, including right now. So any other questions? I think that's it right now. But what I was getting back to is the fact that I start this meeting every year by thanking all of you we've got 40 plus participants attending tonight. I really appreciate that. I know you're not real excited when you get the phone call from me. At least right now, you knew it wasn't attendance related. But the bottom line is I really appreciate you as a support group for whatever extracurricular activity your child participates in. It is a major activity to you, your kids, and the coaches and advisors that oversee those. And we can't thank you enough for what you do in that regard in making things special. Again, as soon as a date is set, we will start as far as when we can commence extracurricular activities. A lot of districts are down as we are. You've probably heard some things, some of them getting ready to pick back up in mid-September. But right now we are still down, and those decisions hopefully will come out sooner rather than later. And again, thank you for remaining positive during this. I'm an old man, and this is definitely uncharted waters to the extreme for me, and I'm sure for many of you too. So I can't thank you enough. Best of luck to you this year, and let's just keep our fingers crossed and have positive thoughts that we're going to be able to put this thing together, get it under control, and allow for our kids to have a second semester that includes competition in whatever their extracurricular activity might be on our school campuses. Okay, thank you. And we said by 7:30. It is 7.
Are we going to remain online for anybody who has a personal question?
If you have an additional question, we'll stick around for a few more minutes. If you got the information you feel you needed and you have taken signed in the chat room for attendance purposes, really appreciate all the thank yous, because this is really I know my first time doing this on this end of a Zoom meeting, and I hope we didn't bore you too much up there, Skip Bill. But all is good, and we thank you very much again. Have a great evening, and fingers crossed we get kids in session and back to their activities that they so love and you guys support. Thank you.